Before kings ruled Israel, before temples rose in Jerusalem, there stood a warrior unlike any other. His name was Joshua, a man of courage, discipline, and unshakable faith, chosen by God to lead his people into the land promised generations before. Today, we dive into the powerful story of Joshua, the commander, the conqueror, and the man who watched God stop the sun. Joshua began his journey not as a general, but as a servant to Moses. He was faithful, obedient, and always listening. In the quiet moments inside the tent of meeting, he learned the ways of God. He wasn't chosen for his brute strength or his skill in battle, but for the unwavering devotion in his heart. He was one of only 2 spies who returned from Canaan with a report of faith, not fear. When Moses grew old, his time to lead was over. God spoke to Joshua directly, commissioning him for the monumental task ahead. The divine command was clear: be strong and courageous. Do not be frightened and do not be dismayed, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. You will lead my people into the land I promised them. Those words ignited a fire within him. Suddenly, the weight of millions rested on his shoulders. The responsibility was immense, enough to make any man tremble, yet Joshua did not. He placed his trust completely in the God who had delivered Israel from Egypt with mighty wonders. This was his moment. The first challenge seemed impossible. The nation of Israel stood at the edge of the promised land, but a formidable barrier blocked their path: the Jordan River at flood season. This wasn't a gentle stream. It was a raging, overflowing torrent. Powerful waves crashed against the banks, making any crossing seem suicidal. How could an entire nation, with women, children, and livestock, get to the other side? While the people saw an obstacle, Joshua saw an opportunity for God to show his power. God gave Joshua a strange and specific command. Tell the priests carrying the Ark of the Covenant to step into the water. It was a test of faith. The priests had to act on the promise before they could see the miracle. Imagine their thoughts as they approached the violent current. But they obeyed. The moment their feet touched the river's edge, the impossible happened. The waters upstream stopped flowing. They rose up like a massive, invisible wall, and the ground beneath their feet turned completely dry. For the second time since leaving Egypt, God parted the waters for his people. Joshua watched in awe as millions walked across the riverbed on dry ground, witnessing God's miracle firsthand. Their entry into the promised land began with a supernatural display of God's faithfulness. Once across the Jordan, their next obstacle was even more daunting. Before them stood the mighty city of Jericho. This wasn't just any city. It was a fortress, a symbol of Canaanite power. Its walls were legendary thick, tall, and seemingly unbreakable, built to intimidate and repel any invading army. Military strategists would have planned a long, brutal siege with battering rams and scaling ladders. But God's strategy was unlike anything Joshua or his commanders could have imagined. There would be no swords, no siege engines, no fire. The command was simple, yet bizarre. March around the city once a day for 6 days. On the 7th day, march around it 7 times. Then, have the priests blow the trumpets, and let all the people give a great shout. It sounded strange, almost foolish from a military perspective. Marching in circles, shouting at walls, it defied all human logic. But Joshua, fresh from witnessing the miracle at the Jordan, did not question. He obeyed. For 6 days, the army of Israel marched in silence. On the 7th day, they circled the city 7 times. Then, as the shofars blasted a piercing note and the unified shout of the people rose to the heavens, the ground began to tremble. Cracks splintered the mighty walls. Stones crumbled and crashed to dust. The unconquerable city of Jericho fell without a single human blow. This was the staggering power of Joshua's obedience. But the journey was not a string of non-stop victories. After the incredible triumph at Jericho, Israel suffered a shocking defeat at the small city of Ai. Confident and perhaps a little arrogant, they sent only a small force, which was quickly routed. The hearts of the people melted with fear. Joshua was devastated. He fell to the ground before God, tearing his clothes and asking why this had happened. God revealed the truth. There was sin in the camp. A man named Achan had disobeyed God's command and had taken forbidden plunder from Jericho. Joshua learned a painful but vital lesson. Sin within the community weakens the entire nation. Success wasn't just about military strategy. It was about purity, obedience, and total dependence on God. After the sin was dealt with and the people were purified, Joshua returned to Ai. This time, following God's precise battle plan, they were victorious. Joshua's most famous moment came during a desperate battle against a coalition of 5 powerful kings who had united to destroy Israel's allies, the Gibeah. Joshua marched his army all night to mount a surprise attack. The fight raged all day, and victory was within their grasp. But the sun was beginning to set. Darkness would allow the enemy forces to escape and regroup. In that critical moment, filled with faith, Joshua cried out before all of Israel a bold, audacious prayer. Sun, stand still over Gibeon, and moon, in the valley of Ajalon. And God listened. The sun stopped in the middle of the sky. Time itself seemed to freeze. What followed was a full, extended day of light, a miracle never seen before or since. With this divine intervention, Israel had the time they needed to secure a total victory. Joshua became known as the man through whom God made the impossible possible. Years passed, the battles were won, and the land was conquered and divided among the 12 tribes of Israel. The promise God made to Abraham centuries before was finally fulfilled under Joshua's leadership. Before he died, an old and respected leader, Joshua gathered all of Israel together one last time. He reminded them of God's faithfulness and delivered a charge that echoes through history. Choose this day whom you will serve. But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. Joshua's life teaches us that courage is not the absence of fear, but trusting God in spite of it. Victory doesn't come from our own strength, but from our obedience to Him. And a faith that is willing to act can turn impossible situations into incredible realities. Joshua's story is more than just history. It's a powerful reminder that God still calls us to trust, to obey, and to walk boldly into the promises He has prepared for us. If this story inspired you, please like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories from the Bible. Thanks for watching.